Damn, technology. We just need a coach. Nico, what's new?
Not too much. I just dropped off a contract for a upcoming dance performance in December, and just been taking care of some business.
All right.
Yep.
Dropping off a contract is a congratulatory occasion?
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we were going to be co-presenting a piece with a dance organization in DC.
Cool. So.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
3:10. I'm tempted to call our coach on the other line. You guys mind if I put my headset down and attempt to call our coach?
Sure.
Let's see if I can find, is it a he or she?
She, and maybe it's best if we call Karen. Well, Karen has provided her phone number as like if we have any questions, and it could be that Yvonne is coming from the next group.
Right.
She said my phone number is, do you want me to give you?
I've got her cell.
Perfect.
Yeah, hang tight.
Oh, new message from Karen. Is she on? I just tried to call and she did not pick up. No. I think Karen sent that just to me because it was probably just reply.
Okay, I'll stand by then.
And then new message from Yvonne. Getting on now. Perfect.
All right. Nice. So Nico's on the screen share, and so is Radhika. Are you joining as well, Grace?
Yeah, I've got it up. I guess I just have to click knock. Oh, I have to enter my name and knock to join.
There you go. That's it. Did it work? Okay, there. Oh.
Maybe we should. Thank you. Okay, no problem. It was great meeting you. Yeah. Bye. Yeah, you too. Have a good luck.
Yeah. Hi there.
Hi.
Hello. Is this Yvonne?
It is. Is it better for me to join on the browser?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do that. I'm doing that right now.
Great.
Recording has started. Oh, great. Okay, cool. I'm going to hang up here, I think. Bye.
Okay, well, hang tight. Looks like somebody applied a background image to the title slide. Pretty fancy. Well, welcome back. Can you hear us now? Cannot hear you. Let's try the chat. See if Yvonne can hear us. You can hear us. We cannot hear you, though. So you may need to fiddle with your microphone settings specific to this application, especially if it's like the first time you've used it. Okay, we're holding. Thank you. my chat just went through and maybe experiencing some wireless technical difficulties. Who wants to drive this call, by the way? Who's our pitch master?
I can get it started.
Nice. Thank you.
Also, I added some, like I changed the fonts and I added that one image to make it look a little nicer.
Thanks, Radhika.
But I can keep doing that as we figure out all of our content.
Sounds good. Grace, are you going to try and go for 7 minutes?
I don't. Hold on, is that me?
I think that was me.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Yvonne.
I don't know how to get off the mute. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. Okay. All right. I'm good.
Well,
here I am.
Welcome back. This is Mateo. You're talking to Radhika as well as Grace as well as Mika, who's our mentor.
Fantastic. Hello.
How are you doing?
Good. Again, sorry for all the tech stuff, huh?
Yeah, no worries. Are you comfortable, situated, ready to go?
Yeah. Yep, I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
It looks like there's a video connection option. We can use that too if that would help.
Sure.
What does that mean? Oh, like a
top left-hand corner. That way we can all see each other.
Oh. Yeah.
Just be wary of the connect with audio.
Connect.
So while you're sharing, that makes little sort of, yeah, there you go. I saw Yvonne for a second.
How do I disconnect the audio? It doesn't matter. I just muted myself. It's fine.
Hello.
Hey.
There's Grace.
How are y'all doing?
Good. I haven't
Cool.
used Join Me in like several years. They've definitely upgraded.
Yeah.
Well, Yvonne, thanks for taking some time to join us. We have 4 of us on the line from Team 1. You've got Mateo in the bottom left corner. We got the Brady Bunch here. My name is Grace. We also have Radhika on the line, another one of our teammates, and also Nico, our mentor. So we have 2 teammates who are not on the line yet. They may be joining us shortly, but we can go ahead and get started.
Sure, let's do it.
So what we're showing you here is the start of our pitch deck. We still have a little bit of progress and ways to go this weekend. We thought we could maybe just give you a little idea of where we are now and then go through the pitch itself.
Yeah, let's do it.
Our group has decided out of the 3 conditions that we can focus on. I'm sure you've been given a little bit of context about the Summer of Design challenge with AmeriHealth, and teams have been offered to focus on diabetes, asthma, or prenatal and maternal care. The prenatal care is where we're going to be focusing our pitch. And this is still a very draft version. We spent several hours on this last night, and we're going to be getting together again this evening. So feel free to jump in at any point, and we'll kind of give you a starter of where we are now, and then in the end can kind of give our 7-minute dry run as well.
Sure.
So getting started on the second slide, on the background slide, I think things might just be a little delayed updating on my end. But the background here in context is that we're focusing on wards 7 and 8 specifically, and we're currently in 2025. So setting the time frame, it's 2025. We're focusing on the wards 7 and 8 population, and specifically women who are going through pregnancy or could at some point be pregnant. We have found through our research that the leading cause of hospitalization in Washington, D.C. is pregnancy related, and actually like 40% higher than any other condition in which patients are hospitalized, second condition being heart condition. So there's a huge opportunity here in terms of the number of women who are hospitalized for prenatal care. We found that specifically within wards 7 and 8, we have a large percentage of our population that's not visiting the hospital until their 2nd or 3rd trimester. So 55% of the city, or 55% of Ward 8, and we're still pulling together some of this research, is going in their first trimester, meaning 45% is not getting in until their second or third.
Mhm.
We're really focusing in on the cost of the neonatal intensive care unit, the NICU, because that's what really drives up the cost and what makes a pregnancy obviously much more complicated when you're leaving your baby behind in the hospital and having to come back and visit your baby. We found that on average a pregnancy is about $4,000, and when you end up having your child go to the NICU, you're going to see that cost go up to $40,000.
Mm.
AmeriHealth is already paying that cost today. They're stuck with the bill. They have, plenty of kids that they are trying to do what they can to get out ahead of prenatal care, and they have strong marketing campaigns today. And they view that they have strong marketing campaigns, and they already have a Bright Start program, a program that's designed for maternal health. They have leading technology with an app where they can communicate via text message with their members. They've tried creating incentives through laptops and iPad games that allow users to be able to access healthcare literacy and content through an iPad. They still haven't found their success yet. So we're really focusing in on our customer needs. The 14 to 18-year-old women are our demographic of Ward 7 and 8. They're our focus area and audience for this pitch. We're really focusing on a health literacy and education perspective. We feel that if we can be ahead of this demographic and help to provide education even before they're pregnant, it should be a less terrifying and scary thing and uncertainty and unknown, and help them to get to the hospital during their first trimester. Any questions at this point around background and context?
No, it's great.
Okay. Value proposition and capabilities, considering that it's currently 2025, we are really excited to be bringing in an educational program partnering with DC Public Schools, where we can provide a educational health literacy program delivered through virtual reality.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is to be able to provide content, deliver content through, like, have you seen those Google glasses today that you set your cell phone in the front of it and then you can watch your iPhone like right in front of you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're thinking of that as like our immediate prototype. While we don't have it to show you right now, I've got my virtual reality. So that would be a way in which we would try to focus in on the population, which we feel that we still have a large opportunity to try to provide education earlier rather than in a reactive manner where these women are already pregnant. And we're trying to figure out an element of how we incentivize this population to want to participate in this education. We're currently throwing around ideas like, is it a game that you're incentivized because you get points? We feel that there's a really strong connection to community and a social network. We learned from speaking with the AmeriHealth that even when they give all this technology to these women and they say, where are you getting your content from? Half of the women say from my friends and half of them say from my mom or aunts. So if we can leverage the existing means of communication, and that is through your social connection and your community, we feel that there's a strong element there that still taps into how we leverage social networks today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what is your, are you going to get into what the concept is, or is that your concept?
It's pretty much the concept right now. I mean, those are a lot of the different moving pieces, but we're still yet to really refine it down into a more refined pitch than that.
I see. Did you want to go through the rest of your deck, or did you want to kind of focus in on the value proposition?
Let's we can just quickly go through what we've got in terms of like what's going to flow in the deck, and then we can come back to the value proposition. So external evidence, we're pulling together quantitative data here to be able to tell the story about the opportunity and reducing NICU cost. Like if AmeriHealth were to save X number of dollars in NICU and be able to reinvest that in this early education program, would they be able to divert where they're spending their money and more preventative care versus reactive NICU care? So our external evidence is more quantitative. Critical assumptions, we are assuming virtual reality is a reality in 2025. We're making that an assumption that is available and affordable. That we can partner with DC Public School about putting this as part of their curriculum and being able to partner with them. It's obviously an impact to them because if women are pregnant, that's an impact to their students. Another assumption is that AmeriHealth will pay for this because the goal is that we'd be able to help them save those dollars at the back end with the NICU's reduction.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also assuming students will attend, which I shared, as a side note. We're still trying to figure out how to get around that rather than it being a straight assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a carrot or a stick? Is it it's required by the DC school system, or you want to play the game,
Mhm. 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 Okay.
And then here's an example of our V1 prototype of, think of the Google box, but we're going to be doing some of our cheap and fast learning launch experiments this weekend.
Cool. That's awesome. So what will you be testing? Is it like you guys have a prototype app already, or are you guys doing storyboards, or?
Radhika, do you want to go through the test questions or the UX plan there?
That is still being decided. I was talking with Mateo about how I'm not quite sure about how we're going to test it, because the thing is that, we have the Google Cardboard, but we don't exactly have we don't have a game that we can put in. So I think Mateo was saying that we would just role play as the test. So, for example, I know one female high schooler that lives in my neighborhood that I could talk to her about it. But I guess what we talked about so far is doing the role play and acting out how it would go. That's what we talked about.
Role play as in pretending they're seeing something, or role playing as in they're seeing a piece of paper?
I think it sounds like pretending they're seeing, if we had a storyboard of if we had drawings in front of them, I think that would be more effective. So
yeah. No, I agree. I think at this point, I think that's a good idea. I think it's just getting some, even low fidelity, at this stage, some drawings to them. It could even be I seen a group just had screens and it had text on it and they had boxes. It wasn't necessarily super drawn out, but it kind of talked about what the flow would look like, and so I understood it, and they tested it this morning. So I think that's totally fine. I think definitely can use paper and pen and get that going. I think it's really to elicit more of a reaction, and kind of for them to tell you oh, this doesn't work, this works and this doesn't work, the flow doesn't make sense, I would never do that. Things like that you probably are looking for. But I kind of want to get back into talking about the value proposition a little bit, just in terms of getting some more clarity on I totally get the problem. I think I do. It's about getting teenagers who will become mothers, making kind of understanding their understanding what it takes to be healthy mothers. Is that kind of what it is too, around improving their health, starting young?
Yeah, essentially focusing on the demographic 14 to 18, assuming that they already are to some degree healthy. I mean, the goal is focus on the health of them and their baby if they find themselves pregnant. And more so, how do we make sure that you are getting to the hospital in your first trimester and aren't, one of two that ends up going in your second trimester, or the 10% that we see that doesn't show up until their third.
I see.
So it's really focused on the educational piece.
And these are for women who are not pregnant at all?
Our thought was that if we get ahead of them, then we would be able to help educate them before they find themselves in that scenario, to then be educated of what they need to do.
I see.
We find it to be kind of tough to intervene, or what's been challenging is for AmeriHealth to intervene once someone's already pregnant.
Right.
They're not finding out until the second or third trimester that one of their members that they're responsible for their health care hasn't gone to the hospital yet.
Yeah, so some things that come to my mind is around sex ed and the regulations and policies around that. Each state does it differently. So I feel like especially if it's with girls or women who are not currently pregnant, it kind of falls in that realm to me a little bit. In a health ed class, for example, or a sex ed class, or maybe a module that a teacher is doing. So there's that, and I would probably, if you're thinking about putting it in schools directly, I'd probably check in on the regulations on that, on like whether each district actually has their own policy, whether they're going to do abstinence only education and or any type of sex ed or, health ed education. I would check in on that just to kind of like, if you're, especially if, for example, if you're going to pilot it in DC, what those are. And so that's the first thing that came to my mind. So I think there's a little bit of hurdles there. I mean, but I think that can be circumvented, especially if it's free, to the schools. Schools are finding it really hard to actually pay for public health classes nowadays, especially sex ed. And I was just, and I was just also thinking, hi, do you have another teammate?
Is that Thomas?
Oh, great. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's Thomas.
Hey, Thomas.
What's up, dude?
Cool. So let me put you on speakerphone. Oh, yeah, no problem. Okay.
Can you hear us now?
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Apologize for my tardiness.
Yes.
Go ahead.
We were tardy too a bit, or I was. We were just talking about the value proposition.
Okay.
A little bit more, just in terms of being a little bit more specific. Can you go back to slide number 4, Mateo?
Yep. You got it. There.
Yeah. So I think that what came to my mind when you were talking, Grace, just was, if we're talking about, okay, if the focus for the team is young women who are in high school who are pre-pregnant, aka not pregnant, and wanting for them to be educated on what it would mean when they are pregnant. Okay, so there's that. So what we're talking about, I think oftentimes in public health, is behavioral changes. So I think that what are there are sets of behavioral changes. I think with this project and the scope of this project, you have to narrow it down. You have to narrow it down to like 1 or 2, and to ask a young person to make a behavioral change around their health is actually a lot to ask, even if it was an adult. So I think that to narrow it down and then focus in on what does this game and or VR experience, how will that affect it, and what are the enablers to make sure that behavioral change will happen. So if this VR is the largest enabler, are there other enablers that go along with it? Maybe it's the partnerships with teachers. Maybe it's actually through the parent angle, going in and educating the parents, and then having them be the kind of advocate for the kid, through this experience that they're going through this journey. Is it a story-based game that you're putting them through, or is it not a game at all? Is it literally like a lesson they have to take as part of their health ed module? So I think that really being able to hone down on what are those behavioral changes, and then I think that can get to a more clarity on what you're fleshing out exactly what your concept is. Because I think if you're talking about social stuff, partnerships, that could look different than a game. But it could also be part of a game. The game could be social. So I think that's why I was also asking for a little more clarity on what that kind of looks like, and what is that exact behavioral change or 1 or 2 that you're trying to get to.
So the behavior change that comes to mind is we want these women to show up to the hospital in their first trimester.
Okay. And there's
a huge correlation between the delay in when they show up, which is a real thing, and the impact that has on the outcome of the health of their baby and themselves at the time of their delivery.
Okay, that's great. Why the focus on teenage girls versus just like having a community kind of community aspect to Ward 7, for example, to get women educated or their families educated about getting to the hospital or getting to the doctor in their first trimester?
So typically these women, like from the stories that we heard, from the interviews that we got to do, is that they might not even be telling their immediate family members in the first 3 months that they're pregnant. They might be scared, nervous, It's not yet a family discussion or family decision. And we feel like that group is an audience that is already at a point that they're very impressionable. They're learning a lot, as we heard from the AmeriHealth contact we worked with, that her quote was, we see, maybe someone remembers it, you're caught more than you're taught.
Yeah.
That's a good quote.
And we want to help reflect and impact what you're taught. How do we help to make this a fun educational thing? It doesn't have to be fun, but I mean, the goal is, if you find yourself pregnant and maybe you aren't ready to tell your mom, here are the things that you would already need to know, like you need to be seeing a doctor within your first trimester, and at least from there, your outcomes, you'll have much better care from the beginning, and AmeriHealth can help support you through your pregnancy than if they're only learning about it in the second or third trimester.
Right, but what about the crucial step of them deciding whether or not to keep the baby?
That would probably be part of their OBGYN visit, like their visit with the doctor, even that early on.
I see.
So our goal of intervention is get them in front of a physician much sooner than when they are today.
Which, I mean, another component of that is to start getting information about pregnancy and about safety from their OBGYN as opposed to from their community of aunts and friends that, share kind of, the knowledge that they have about the subject. Because, that's not cutting it. So, I mean, as Grace said, we will be successful in this if we raise that percentage point, 55%, up to a higher percentage of women that visit the doctor during the first trimester. And to do that, as opposed to marketing communication campaigns to the community as a whole, we want to target young girls in an academic setting, in a classroom formal setting. We want there to be aspects of gamification, but this is a learning experience, and this should not be considered, a game. So we want to steer clear of that. We want this to be a part of the health module. Mateo, Grace, do you agree with that? If we can just kind of focus on one or the other right now, and I think last night we kind of came to an agreement that we were going to move away from gaming. Is that true?
Right.
Yeah, I think that gets back to our assumptions. Like whether we have our challenge that we're trying to get around is how do we guarantee that young girls will participate in the virtual reality educational program?
Wait, say again, the last one.
That how are we going to ensure that the girls participate in this program?
Right.
There's two ways to think about that. We make it an assumption to say we're assuming that it's part of the DC public school curriculum by 2025, and thus we're the solution on how that curriculum is delivered. And if it's not a requirement, then we need to figure out how to incentivize people to participate, which is where the game comes in. And the game's not necessary if it's required, and we're the means of how we're solving the educational delivery.
And then I would respond to that, kind of just to be definitive about the subject, that we assume that it is a module in the healthcare class as a sophomore in high school in DC public schools by 2025, and we recommend ideal situations in the curriculum that exists today where it could be slotted in.
Okay. Great. So I think it's good to be clear about the assumptions, and I think it's great that it's clear on what the type of behavioral goal that you guys are trying to reach are. I'm just also thinking through, it sounds like to me that it's almost like building a partnership with AmeriHealth to develop the software module. It's almost like an education tech kind of thing, to enable kind of lots of learning for these young girls, for these young women. I guess I'm just also wondering, like, is this kind of, are you all thinking along the lines that this is like a complementary thing to a textbook kind of situation? That this is like a direct contract with the schools in partnership with AmeriHealth that's kind of providing this level of interactive kind of activity, that, currently is not really cutting it, or even completely lack. There is no education right now around pregnancy for young women. I wanted to get your kind of like thinking as a team around that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense as a supplement to a textbook type of education where we're not teaching through theoretical, abstract. Instead, we're teaching through an experience that you can have in a classroom. And I think that'll be much more impactful. So that's the virtual reality experience, and it will complement, the sex education that I'm sure DC schools are already teaching.
Okay. And then how are you guys thinking around like is this kind of some kind of around revenue models? Like, is this something that that grants are happening, that Mary Health will be paying for this?
Grace actually ran some pretty cool numbers. Do you want to speak to that, Grace?
Yeah, so the external evidence, the goal is revenue comes from cost avoidance of NICU.
Oh, I see. So I think for me, I'm still trying to, I get the concept. I kind of want to be able for us to be drilling down to the core essence of not just virtual reality for young women, teenage women to get better care if they do get pregnant. Kind of drilling down to what does that behavioral change kind of look like? Is this kind of like this social experience that like the young women have their own little caucus each class? So be able to drill down into a specific behavioral change, I think is useful, because I'm still having a bit of a hard time around the value proposition outside of VR and health ed class, which a lot of other companies are actually looking into right now. So what specifically for Ward 7 and 8 that this will be much more useful for than versus just a blanket tech company who's making the same exact software for education companies right now or healthcare companies?
Yeah, I don't think that we really addressed that. I think that and that's kind of the beauty of it, is the scalability, right? Ward 7 and 8 seem to be hardest hit in the district in terms of costs of NICU, number of babies that are premature. So if we can get that under control in Ward 7 and 8, I think that would be a huge benefit to the community as a whole. But you're absolutely right. I think it could be as easily applied to Wards 2 and 3, and could be a benefit and experiential learning to those students as well.
So did you, in your research, what did you, in addition to the whole we're taught and we're caught, or the other way around?
Yeah, we're caught, yeah.
What else did you guys learn that was helpful?
Well, one piece that we keep coming back to is that AmeriHealth feels that they have made vital information, health information, has made it very apparent to the community through different communication channels. Setting up events in the community, a web mobile-based platform, calling, scheduling appointments, following up with appointments. So what we didn't want to do is create a new marketing communications campaign to bring awareness to this issue, because that does not seem to be a root cause. A lack of awareness does not seem to be a root cause. There is a lack of awareness. However, there's a reason for it that's deeper than that, right? And the other piece that we keep coming back to is that information is coming from community members who are trusted, family members, friends, as opposed to from medical professionals, which is another communication link that we want to change by hopefully giving a woman an experience of a pregnancy that understanding, that knowledge, that experience will in fact lead to greater trust in the medical system as a whole.
Oh, that's a lot to ask. I think there's several components for me here. I think there's like there's a trust thing, and I think trust in general for doctors, because I've heard that in other teams too. They're working on more like trust in doctors, and then trust for the medical kind of institution itself. That's pretty large, large ask, large thing to tackle. So that's one that immediately comes to my mind. And then two, what are these enablers though? You know what I'm saying? Because I think that virtual reality is a channel to something, but then what are the enablers to what do you actually want them to do? It's like, okay, make an appointment with your doctor if you're pregnant, but there are so many barriers to even get to that point of like, do you know what I'm saying? So I feel like is there something more specific that feels like a small win to get a teenage girl to do if she does get pregnant and or have questions around her reproductive health? You know, is there a
smaller win than getting her to an OBGYN in her first trimester?
Yes, because that's making the assumption that she will get pregnant at some point if she's under, you know, in the next like 3 or 4 years, which she may not be. So I guess it's just in this whole package that I'm hearing about, there's definitely a value proposition there. It's really being able to almost even say like it takes a village, and it involves the school, involves the teacher, involves the student to make empowered choices about our health. So I think there's definitely a great value proposition there. What I'm trying to do with my line of questioning is having you guys unpack that and get to like a core aspect of it, because it still feels really broad. And to get more specific about like, we are trying to get her, we're trying to like provide a level of convenience and really easy access to medical professionals to answer really random questions sometimes about your reproductive health that they may be feeling really embarrassed about. They're not going to call an OBGYN about it, but maybe they'll like go chat a nurse line or something, you know, for that, or maybe they will, you know, do something else. Like instead of texting their friend, they're going to text them like this nurse line that is talking their language. If we're looking at virtual reality, maybe it actually takes you through an experience of like what it means to go through an entire experience of getting a pap smear or getting whatever, birth control or whatever that is. So you know, so I think I'm trying to get to a level of granularity there so that we can actually talk about specific behavioral changes for teenage girls that provides that kind of upholds this entire other value proposition and vision that you have of getting to lowering the risk of pregnancy complications and the health of the young woman when she is pregnant.
That's you hit the nail on the head there. And that's a really difficult thing because it's a confluence of factors that are leading to the current state of, I think, misinformation and mistrust.
And I think that like I previously worked on a project around sex ed and young people. There is also a conference. I don't know if it's useful for you all. It's called Youth Tech Health. It's an organization that sponsors this conference every year that has a bunch of cool public health community organizations that talk about literally youth tech and health, how technology is enabling positive public health outcomes for teenagers. Anyways, so I think that like in this project I worked on around sex ed, it is really complex. There's a lot of things happening, a lot of like either embarrassing questions and or legitimate medical questions. They're not asking it because, for example, in California where I was working on this project, it's abstinence-only education. So they definitely teach that in school. So you know, so I think that like, how can we tease this apart? How can your team tease this apart, or how can we tease this apart right now into like a manageable part of the behavior that you can scale up, or you can scale big as your pilot proves to be successful. You know, so is it these random questions about reproductive health around sex that you're really trying to get to, that you're, or is it really like, you know, that they have a trusted, you know, health buddy that they can actually call up if something really crazy happens, if they get pregnant. They can definitely call this number that they talk to, like a peer or a mentor that can talk them through it. I don't know. So I think it's like, how can we break this into manageable parts around behavior changes that we can think about as a platform to scale up and broader?
Yeah. And I think the most granular that we are right now is providing technology to a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it comes across, what that technology is going to do in terms of ingraining an experience and a thought process that wasn't there before.
Sure.
So I think that's extremely powerful. But you're absolutely right. What's going to inspire, empower, excite young women about this technology and about that day? What's going to make them go to school that day? And all we can do there is put that on our assumption board and say, students will attend class.
Right.
Technology will be in class.
Right. Well, maybe what could be helpful is like thinking about like 2 or 3 scenarios that could be running through, especially if you're thinking about like some wireframes or mock-ups that you want to show some people over the weekend, about like running them through a scenario of like, is it helpful to run you through a scenario of like understanding what birth control is out there? Because then when you go to the office of Planned Parenthood or whatever, like this is the process you're going to go through.
Yeah.
Is it helpful to run through like procedures, or is it helpful just to run through a scenario where you actually do get pregnant, you're playing a little mini scenario game, and you actually see what the outcomes are if you choose these different choices? So, or how you talk about sex or whatever it is. So I think that like maybe, if it's helpful to think about specific scenarios, that would be useful, and even getting a learning test out and testing out with 1 or 2 teenagers if you have access to them, of being like, are these things even interesting to you? Or maybe they already know it, and what they really want to know is some really granular, like more advanced stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that like, yes, you have your assumptions, but like, let's make them into like scenarios and be able to do these quick learning tests. Or maybe if you can't do the learning test, put that in your next phase kind of slide of being like, this is what we're going to be testing in our next phase. And then that's perfectly okay too, because other teams are doing the same thing. Because there's not enough time.
I'm glad to hear that.
There just hasn't been enough time from what I've seen for a lot of teams to test out all this stuff, and then get even enough user research, and then 2, be able to test out what the concept that they have. So I think the important thing is being able to like really hone in on what the value proposition is and type of behavioral change and public health that you want to make with the target population that you identified, and then be able to have whatever that concept is around it, and then be able to talk about like what are these some of the assumptions and what do the next phase look like, in terms of being able to validate and iterate on this idea.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly where we are. Radica is leading the charge on developing some sort of test scenario for our learning launch that we may or may not have time to execute. So thank you for confirming that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you're all actually in a good spot. I think it's just being able to prioritize and narrowing a little bit. I think the scenario kind of structure might be helpful. There are other frameworks too. I mean, I'm seeing here outcomes, learning opportunities. So if we're thinking about VR as a tool, and we're thinking about a little bit about content, I think with the different types of scenarios, you can even test out one that's more gaming leaning, another that's like super educational, another one that's really purely like a virtual reality experience of like going to the doctor's office or something like that, where you actually physically see what happens, or you're not scared about what's actually going to happen at a doctor's office if you're a young woman. And the type of questions to ask or something like that. So I think, or it could be about your body, like visualizing and seeing as an educational part, like this is what your body and how it goes through, and these are the signs that you are pregnant and that you should probably talk to somebody about it. So there's different like things, assumptions you can place in each scenario bucket that you can be testing in your learning plan or learning launch either this weekend or in the future, that can get to like what part is actually sticky that you can iterate on and build out a little bit more to test again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and also because just kind of another thing around taking a look at your pitch deck. I think this is really great to lay it out like this. I would I would just from a presentation standpoint, you can either do like a half page or 1 page handout if you really want to give some details. But I think just from a presentation pitch standpoint, it's way too much text, and they're not going to be able to pay attention to your story verbally. And I think that's the most important part because that carries the emotional aspect of why it's important and the implications and ramifications of if this idea that you have is not implemented. You know, even though you're attacking a small part of the problem, it still is going to contribute to this larger problem of like public health crisis, you know, in this area. So I think that limit the text, do a lot more visuals, talk to it. But if you feel like these are really important facts you want them to know, do a small handout that you can give out at the end, and things like that. So just to kind of from a efficacy and being effective as a presenter point of view in terms of pitch, from what I've seen and what I've done, that is probably the most effective. So they can focus, they can look at the visual and then they can focus on you, and you talking instead of trying to read all that text. Because that's what I was doing actually when you were presenting, Grace. I was reading all the text and I was half listening to you. So that's one thing too. Tighten up, like, because you only have 7 minutes. I think tighten up like the core points you want to say in each section. And then what I actually been showing some teams here is kind of like a really basic story bell curve thing. I'm sure you've seen it where it's like the build up, the climax, and the resolution of a basic story structure. So if you're able to think about your pitch in this way as well, what is the build up? What is the story? Whether it's using statistics, whether it's using an actual person's story, actual story that you made up, or a real story that you got from the field. Building that up into like what the climax is kind of like, this is kind of like your solution of like how you're planning to address that. And you can insert some findings from your research here. So this is a very, very basic skeleton of like how to think about your pitch and how to think about like the emotional level of what you want to kind of implement when you're talking in the next 7 minutes. And then moving into like how this actually works and what do the partnerships look like, some next phase, and then what is your vision? What are the takeaways? It's like if there's only one thing you want your audience to take away, what would that be?
Cool.
So I think it's like being able to think about a basic framework for your pitch, and how to weave a story thread throughout that that carries out across, and kind of starting with the. I always like to start with kind of the emotional thing, even if it's just statistics. You kind of get to like the imperative, because I think you need to get to the imperative, and then you need to get to the point right away. Because I've also seen pitches where they take a long time to get to the point. And by that point, you're like lost, and you're like, okay, how does that relate to the problem you just said? So I think it's just like iterating the problem, and then being like, this is how we're helping to be part of the solution, and then you talk about it. So that's what I found to be helpful, just in terms of like for me myself when I've done pitches, but then also when I've been talking to groups today, just around thinking of having a basic framework, and what is the experience line? If you think about this as an experience line, of how you want to kind of like craft that story for the audience, because this project is about people, and it's about trying to solve a social problem on some level. It's a social venture kind of like tint, so like having that kind of level of emotional kind of being able to kind of like reach out on that first is probably pretty important. That's also another way to think about in terms of your pitch, how to a potential framework that you guys can use, and in addition to like the type of content that you have.
Very cool.
So we were actually thinking about possibly doing like a role play during our pitch to like demonstrate how things would work. Do you think that is a good idea at all to do?
How long is the role play?
It wouldn't be that long. It like everything would still be within 7 minutes, but we didn't quite figure out how long it would be.
Yeah, so I think I think you can do a role play. It has to be probably practiced and timed. I think it's usually better to do some storyboard stuff because you're able to speak to it. But I think that like if you feel like you can take maybe 2 minutes out of your presentation to do a role play and you feel like it can be very powerful, much more so than just kind of seeing something on the slide, then I think you can do it. Just make sure that's rehearsed, and because 7 minutes can go by fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Cool.
So I would caution that too, because I think other groups wanted to do videos and role plays and stuff like that, but just be really clear about what the intention is and how big and what is the impact you want. And if the role play is going to cause the impact that you want, much better than if you just show some storyboards and talk to it, then do it. But just be aware of timing, because then that might eat up time in terms of transition to and then after to your presentation.
Cool.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions? How are y'all feeling?
Good.
Feeling good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I think we have the pieces here. I think we have the pieces.
Yeah. I think I love all the kind of stats that you have and the research kind of summaries. I think you can definitely speak to it versus kind of seeing it. Yeah, I think it looks really, really great, very developed. So.
Thank you. It's only been a few days that this really came together, so we appreciate the compliment and all of the pointers and feedback and expert advice. We've got immediately applicable next steps to take. We took some notes and added into the slides, in addition to a few takeaways last night in our last working session together. So, Radhika and Thomas and Nico, how do you feel we're standing at this point? It's 4 o'clock.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I'm
happy.
Yeah, this is Nico. I feel pretty good. I mean, I think there's a lot of work to do. So I think, the more the team is able to find time to come together to work on that, I think you guys should be fine. I think the points about the role play and making sure it's well rehearsed, if you are going to do that, I think is something worth considering given the amount of time that there is left. But, I'll let you guys figure out what makes the most sense given the amount of time you guys have.
Okay. Thank you. And Thomas, I heard you jumping in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think overall we've come so far this week, and I think we have a really nice design. So now, as Yvonne was just telling us, we need to cut out a lot of that text in the slide deck for the presentation, which is completely, right on point. I think those slides were originally just going to be used to be turning in our assignment on Sunday, and make it beautiful and clean, and really just tighten up how we convey this idea, which is very realizable with another meeting coming up on Sunday. So I'm positive.
Cool. Radhika, how are you doing?
I feel good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I really want.
Okay.
I really think it'd be awesome if Cher was able to get us into the pregnancy lab in her med school, and so we could actually throw up a few visuals of what a VR system might look like.
Yep,
that would be powerful.
That would be. We'll have to follow up with her tonight with our next working session. I believe we're getting together at 7 over at advisory board. And anyone who is free, okay. I think it's just Grace and I. I'm not sure if you're going to make it Thomas or Radhika.
I'm not going to make it tonight.
Yep.
I can't make it either.
Okay. All right, we've got very prescriptive stuff here. With Yvonne's time in mind. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to keep in mind that Yvonne probably has a 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I will step out.
Sorry.
I'm not here yet, but yeah, good. Well, I'm not sure when I'll be there for pitch night. I'm gonna try to see if I can make it, but good luck, and I'm sure it sounds like it's gonna be awesome. You are really great grounding from what I've seen. It's really honing in on that value proposition and your story. I also would recommend, if you guys have not thought about it already, probably limiting the number of speakers. Transition time is always hard. That's where audience is lost. So just thinking about that when you're thinking about presenting.
That's a great point.
So catch their attention from the start and make sure you keep it.
All right, thanks.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Cool. Thanks so much, all. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend.
All right, thanks. You too. Good luck. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye now.
Could our team